Good morning. Today we're going to speak about the Sanctions Committee on Eritrea and Somalia. I think it is a very positive developments that we're seeing in the reconciliation between Eritrea and Ethiopia, which also creates a context in which we will have to review the sanctions regime, and that we're also looking very closely, while at the same time and also acknowledging the positive effect that this can have on the entire region, that we have to look very closely at all the criteria in place for the sanctions regime, whether on the basis of which we can decide whether we change them or not. And one of the elements that I have in mind particularly is the use of extortion in the diaspora tax. In the inning of the diaspora tax, one of the criteria is that violence or threats of violence are not allowed to be used, and this is one thing that is very important also for the diaspora in my country, so we will look very closely at that. Thank you.
The 8,322nd meeting of the Security Council is called to order. Provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in Somalia. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Djibouti, Eritrea, and Somalia to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. At this meeting, the Council will hear a briefing by Ambassador Kairat Umarov, Permanent Representative of Kazakhstan, in his capacity as Chair of the Security Council Committee established pursuant to Resolutions 751 and 1907 concerning Somalia and Eritrea. I now give the floor to Ambassador Kairat Umarov.
Thank you, Mr. President. As mandated by paragraph 11G of Resolution 1844, I have the honor to brief the Security Council in my capacity as the Chair of the Sanctions Committee, pursuant to Resolutions 751 and 1907 concerning Somalia and Eritrea, covering the period from 14th March to the end of July this year. During the reporting period with regard to the arms embargo on Somalia, the Committee received 10 notifications pursuant to paragraph 10G of Resolution 2111, 3 notifications from Member States pursuant to paragraph 4 of Resolution 2142, and 2 from Federal Government of Somalia pursuant to paragraphs 2 and 9 of Resolution 2385. The Committee also received 2 post-delivery confirmations from Federal Government of Somalia pursuant to paragraphs 6 and 7 of Resolution 2142, for which the Committee did not receive advance delivery notification. At the outset, I wish to welcome the signing of the joint declaration of peace and friendship on 9th of July this year by the President of the State of Eritrea, Mr. Isaias Afwerki, and the Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, and salute the commitment by both parties to open a new chapter of cooperation and partnership. We also positively note the July 28th visit of Somalia President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo to Asmara on invitation of President of Eritrea. Today, my briefing will mainly focus on my May visit to Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Somalia, and ensuing committee activities and decisions. Mr. President, the visit in May marked the first occasion since 2010 in which the chair of this committee has traveled to the Horn of Africa region. We have received a great cooperation from all countries we visited. All countries extended their welcome and cooperation at the highest possible level. All our interlocutors were frank in sharing with us their perspectives. The region is committed to continuing resolving issues and working towards further stability and enduring peace. When meeting with the delegation in Addis Ababa, Ethiopian Prime Minister noted the principled position of Ethiopia in solving conflicts by peaceful means and expressed readiness to start a dialogue with Eritrea. These views might have been the forerunner of the developments witnessed in recent days. I regret that Eritrea did not invite the delegation and did not take the opportunity to provide its views on the situation in the Horn of Africa, including on the implementation of sanctions. I wish to reiterate the Committee's continued commitment to engage with Eritrea. In this regard, I addressed a letter on behalf of the Committee to the Eritrean Chargé d'Affaires of the Permanent Mission, in which I expressed the Committee's regret at the lack of response to the proposed visit to Asmara. I also called upon the Eritrean authorities to cooperate with the Committee and the Somalia and Eritrea Monitoring Group. This visit to the region was a diplomatic and trust-building exercise. The goal was to engage directly with the authorities to obtain first-hand information on the situation in the region, including on the implementation of the sanctions measures on Somalia and Eritrea, and to assess the effectiveness of the measures and their implementation in order to promote peace and security in the Horn of Africa. While acknowledging and encouraging their efforts, particularly concerning notifications to the Committee, I reminded the Somali officials of their obligations under the partial lifting of the arms embargo and the necessity to comply with them. On the charcoal ban, the Somali authorities expressed serious concern about the continuing charcoal trade that contributes to the financing of the terrorist activities of Al-Shabaab. The President of Somalia noted the importance of an adequate implementation of the charcoal ban, while the Prime Minister requested the Committee to sanction those individuals and entities responsible for receiving illicit Somali charcoal. The Committee is to consider that request very seriously. On regional dynamics, all interlocutors cited the destabilizing effects of the Yemen war on the stability of the region. The war has had an impact not only on arms flows, but also on commercial relations, investment, trade, and tourism between Yemen and countries in the Horn of Africa. Mr. President, in terms of sanctions on Somalia, we observed a strong will on the part of the federal government of Somalia to portray the new administration in a new light of reforms and willingness to take responsibility for their own security and future. While this is commendable, it is the view of Committee that the arms embargo should not be completely lifted until Somalia undergoes political and security reforms and creates strong institutions capable of securing adequate weapons and ammunition management. All interlocutors cautioned against a premature AMISOM withdrawal from Somalia, as they considered the Somali forces not yet ready to fully take over responsibility for their own security. The Committee fully endorsed other recommendations aimed at strengthening and implementation of the sanction measures. As such, two notes verbales reminding Member States of their respective obligations under the terms of the arms embargoes and the charcoal ban were distributed respectively on the 25th and 28th of June. I also propose that the Committee discuss the recommendations made by the Joint Verification Team in its first report of 1st of May this year. The Committee met on 25th of June. In this regard, the Committee has revised its implementation assistance notice on the arms embargo to include some of the recommendations made by Joint Verification Team. Since the delegation was unable to meet Special Representative of the Secretary General for Somalia, Mr. Michael Keating, during our trip to Mogadishu, the Committee held informal consultations on 20th of July, during which Mr. Keating shared his insights on peace and security matters in Somalia as they relate to the sanctions regime. In conclusion, this was an important visit during which the Committee gained invaluable insights into the current political and security situation in the Horn of Africa. The information we gathered enabled the Committee to act in order to enhance the implementation of the sanction measures on Somalia and Eritrea. Mr. President, I would like to assure Council members that the Committee will continue its contribution to the Council's efforts to achieve durable peace and stability in Somalia and the Horn of Africa. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan for his briefing, and I want to express my appreciation for your leadership as chair of the Security Council Committee established pursuant to Resolution 751 and 1907. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Ambassador Kairat Omarov for his briefing and for his dedicated efforts in guiding the work of the committee. We appreciate the outcome of his visit to the region, which took him to Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Somalia. I must reiterate how much we have been appreciative of the objectivity and integrity with which he has managed the work of the committee. Of course, a lot of things have happened since the chair's visit, and these have enormous implications for the work of this committee, and in a number of ways, indeed, for the sanctions regime as well. It's downright impossible to deny that the politics of the Horn of Africa is in the process of rapid change and with salutary implications. All this is the result of the rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which would have been thought to be totally inconceivable only a few months ago. What has happened over the last couple of weeks is indeed historic. After 20 years hiatus, Ethiopia and Eritrea have decided to turn the page and open a new chapter of not just in the normalization of relations, but in the expression of commitment to build relations which truly reflect the long-standing ties between their peoples. What was once considered impossible has been made possible thanks to the courageous and bold steps taken by the leadership of the two countries. The Ethiopian and Eritrean people who have been longing for peace for 2 decades have warmly welcomed this breakthrough with a lot of jubilation and optimism. Gone are the days when no one could be sure how long the guns would continue to be silent between the two countries. This, as already indicated, has enormous meaning and significance, not only for the peoples of the two countries, but also for the region, which has been ravaged by conflict and crisis for far too long. It would also have a major and historic contribution to the efforts being made to silencing the guns in Africa, setting an example in the resolution of conflicts in the continent. There is no question the region would be in a far better position to contribute to peace in Somalia. IGAD would be more effective in bringing the countries of the region together to work for peace and regional cooperation in all areas, much better than hitherto. It is in this broader context that we want this Council to understand what's happening between Ethiopia and Eritrea. This wind of change has been welcomed by the region and beyond. No doubt, the positive momentum generated over the last couple of weeks must be sustained, and the international community has a responsibility to support the efforts by the two countries, and we believe this Council has a particular responsibility in this regard. Already, the improved relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea seem to have facilitated the restoration of the friendly relations between Eritrea and Somalia, as became evident when the President of Somalia, Mr. Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed Farmajo, paid a state visit to Eritrea a few days ago. It is impossible to ignore that this is a major boost for progress in the stabilization of the situation in Somalia. The Council must appreciate the significance of this development for the security of the region. Mr. President, it appears to us very proper that the Council supports and encourages the bold steps taken by the Ethiopian Prime Minister. This has underlined how much doing things outside the box is necessary to break logjams in conflict situations, no matter how those might have been intractable in the past. If there is indeed a recognition of the broader context that I have tried to explain in the foregoing, I do not think it will be difficult to find innovative ways of acknowledging the significance of this development in our region. At a time when the resolution of conflict is becoming very complex, and we have come to acknowledge how much the prevention of conflict should be prioritized, the breakthrough for peace achieved between Ethiopia and Eritrea is no doubt something to be celebrated. It's Ethiopia's conviction that this welcome development is not meant to be limited to the relations between the two countries. I want to take this opportunity to assure you, Mr. President, that the prevailing spirit is one of embracing and not excluding anyone in the region. It is in this spirit that we are trying to do our part to contribute toward the restoration of friendly relations between the good people of Djibouti and Eritrea. The Djibouti Foreign Minister was in Addis Ababa last week to deliver the message of President Gule to my Prime Minister, and he was able to conduct very productive and useful discussions, both with our Prime Minister and his counterpart, our Foreign Minister. Ethiopia has expressed its readiness to do whatever is necessary to contribute to the normalization of relations between Eritrea and Djibouti. And it's our firm commitment. This is critical for peace and security in our region. The new spirit that has been created should exclude no country. And this is the foundation on which Ethiopia's policy is based. Naturally, this new spirit also demands that no country should no longer be isolated. The Council has an obligation here. Let me conclude by expressing our readiness to work closely with the Council in the coming months towards sustaining this remarkable achievement, which has enormous implications for the peace and prosperity of the Horn of Africa and even beyond. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Ethiopia for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Good morning again, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. The federal government of Somalia is pleased to host the visit of the chair of the Sanctions Committee, Ambassador Khairat Omarov, and the committee members to Mogadishu on May 8th. The committee members were briefed on some significant areas of progress during their visit. There is no doubt that the peace and security challenges facing Somalia remain daunting, but this administration, the administration of President Farmajo, is making serious attempt to address them in line with many of the recommendations of the monitoring group. Sanctions are designed as a tool to help tackle security challenges, and we share the same aim of preventing weapons falling into the terrorist hands, of cutting off funding to Al-Shabaab, or ensuring that Somalia's resources such as fish stocks and charcoal cannot be exploited in order to destabilize the country, and that the fight in terrorism is not only the military endeavor, it must include good governance, inclusive politics, reconciliation, fighting corruption. In these areas, the federal government of Somalia's objectives and those of the Sanctions Committee are aligned. But Somalia of today is not Somalia of when the sanctions were first imposed. Al-Shabaab remains a vicious threat, and we must continue to maintain measures that choke off their resources and limit their means to attack innocent people. But Somalia has made significant progress with regard to this public financial management, security sector reform, weapons management, and accountability. There is a long way to go, but the committee of monitoring, the committee and the monitoring group should focus their effort on those areas where the threat of instability is the greatest. The monitoring group has one of the widest mandates of all sanction regimes. We believe that Somalia's progress should be reflected in the mandate and focus on the group that the Security Council takes into account the progress and the federal government's of a strong commitment and continue to make progress. my administration is making a genuine attempt to improve our system's processes and standards. We recognize that there are those who benefit from the status quo and will seek to slow down and reverse our progress. We therefore urge you to support us by focusing on spoilers, not on those engaged in challenging tasks of the state building. Mr. President, we have shown commitment to improve aspects of our compliance with the regime. We request from the Security Council to review and update existing measures. For example, paragraph 10C and 11A allow weapons to go to Somalia's security institutions that fall outside the national structure, namely undefined Somali security force and AMISOM strategic partners without our notification and proper WAM process in place. This is problematic and exacerbating arms fragmentation in our country. Our government would like to see these paragraphs to be carefully reviewed and revised. Somali government will continue to build on this and set out in Somalia's transition plan will develop standard operating procedures to achieve comprehensive weapons ammunition management system and will establish Weapons and Ammunition Management Commission to counter the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in order to ensure the safe and effective distribution, storage and security of stocks and trained personnel at both the federal government and federal member states levels. We are committed to ensuring the Somali's resources are not used to finance al-Shabaab's operations. So February National Security Council endorsed the interim agreement on fisheries revenue, and in April the cabinet agreed to ban the domestic sale of charcoal in parallel to improving implementation of the charcoal ban. It also is important to us that Somali precious natural resources are retained to assist with the vital economic regeneration of the country. This means tackling illegal fishing and ensuring the Somalis' waters and rich fish stocks can provide a livelihood for the Somalis and help make stability sustainable. On June 5th, the National Security Council reached an agreement on ownership, management and sharing of the country's natural resource as stated in the agreement on the national resource sharing. Somalia is a country emerging from decades of war, battling a brutal insurgency, but we are demonstrating a strong commitment to building a reform our institutions and to meet our obligation under the sanctions regime. Our efforts are slowly bearing fruit, but too often we are criticized for what we have not achieved yet, rather than recognized for our progress. Our capacity remains at the early stage, but to build it will require the support of partnership in the Council and its subsidiary bodies. We hope we can count on the steadfast support of the continue to make the support, to make progress. Lastly, we cannot ignore the development in the region. And I would like to take this opportunity to also again welcome the latest development regarding the protracted conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. And we further please the signing of the steps taken to implement the joint declaration of peace and friendship to normalize relations between the two brotherly countries. My President Farmajo, has went to a state visit to Eritrea last week. And having said that, Mr. President, Somalia stressed also the need for Eritrea and Djibouti to expeditiously agree on means of peaceful dispute settlement on all unresolved and disputes between the two states. I thank you again and wish you the best.
I thank the representative of Somalia for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Eritrea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished members of the UN Security Council. It gives me great honor to address this council on behalf of the Eritrean people who struggle to create a peaceful and cooperative neighborhood is a matter of historical record. 3 generations of Eritreans had paid the ultimate sacrifices to establish a regional order based on international law, economic complementarity, while mindful of the shared culture and history of the people. Mr. President, in recent weeks, the Horn of Africa has witnessed developments of historic proportion. Eritrea and Ethiopia has taken a bold step to end the state of war and open a new chapter of peace and friendship. This state of war that prevailed for the past 2 decades has had devastating consequences beyond the two countries and peoples. It obstructed meaningful cooperation and undermined regional mechanisms of conflict prevention and resolution. The agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia puts an end to this distorted regional order of enmity and competition and opens a new horizon for sustainable peace and economic integration. It will strengthen the sub-regional conflict prevention and resolution mechanism. Moreover, today, Eritrea and Somalia signed a joint declaration during the historic visit of His Excellency Mahmoud Abdullahi Mohammed to Eritrea. They have agreed to exchange ambassadors, forge political, economic, social, cultural, defense and security cooperation, as well as join hands to address the hurdles of regional peace and security. The positive externalities of these developments to the entire region cannot be overstated. Mr. President, it's long been evident that the sanctions against the people of Eritrea cannot be justified in the name of maintaining international peace and security. The sanctions is kept despite the fact that the pretexts for its imposition have proven false for years. In so doing, the Council did not contribute to peace and amity in the region. To the contrary, it undermined and derailed regional cooperation for a decade. Within the emerging regional context, we find it inexplicable that the Council is discussing the sanctions on Eritrea today. The most appropriate action should have been lifting the sanctions, thereby indicating in unequivocal terms it supports the aforementioned positive developments. Eritrea welcomes the calls by several countries, including Ethiopia and Somalia, for lifting the sanctions. Eritrea finds it unacceptable that few members of the Council continue to set preconditions and change the goalpost. They intend to keep the political pressure on the people of Eritrea for a reasons not related to the maintenance of international peace. As in the past, it is clear whatever Eritrea does in fulfilling its commitment towards the Council's resolution, and despite the changes that the region witnesses, these members are unwilling to lift the unjustified punitive measures. Mr. President, the Security Council should not miss another opportunity to contribute positively to regional peace and security in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. What is at stake is the credibility of the Council in the eyes of the citizens of the region. By lifting the sanctions immediately and unconditionally, the Council can send a positive message that it supports the desire of the citizens of the region to live in peace and economically thrive together. And the Council is ready to accompany them on their arduous journey to remove the hurdles of regional integration. The other option for the Council is to maintain business as usual, of placing preconditions, changing the goalposts, and keeping these politically motivated sanctions without justification. The message to the citizens of the region will be the Council is unwilling to work in tandem with regional developments and will continue to encourage spoilers seeking to undermine the unfolding peace and integration. On its part, Eritrea will remain committed to double its efforts and join hands with the countries in the region to ensure peace and accelerate socio-economic progress in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Eritrea for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Djibouti.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I wish to thank the Chair of the Security Council Committee, pursuant to Resolutions 751 and 907, concerning Somalia and Eritrea, for his briefing covering the period from March 2018 to the end of July 2018. I would like to particularly thank the Chair, Ambassador Kairat Umarov, for his visit in May to the region and to Djibouti. I believe this visit had provided an excellent opportunity for the committee to have direct interactions with the authorities in the region and consult with them on how some of the issues that continue to plague the region and negatively impact its efforts towards peace, development, and prosperity could be best addressed. Djibouti too regrets that Eritrea did not invite their delegation and did not take the opportunity to provide its views on the situation in the Horn of Africa, including on the implementations of sanctions. As witnessed by its refusal to invite the chair and cooperate with the monitoring group, Eritrea continues to display a pattern of behavior characterized by denial, obstruction, and obfuscation. As stated in its letter to the Secretary General circulated to the members of the Security Council, Djibouti welcomes the latest positive developments regarding the protracted conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia and the readiness by the Council to support both countries in their implementation of the joint declaration. This is indeed a development we should all embrace and celebrate because the region for far too long has experienced various intra- and interstate conflict with dire economic and social consequences. They have depressed and disrupted economic development and hampered efforts towards regional integration. Apart from the physical destruction of life and property, conflicts have diverted scarce resources from development to support war. It would be worth assessing the cumulative losses in gross domestic product in the region because of conflicts. It stands to reason to suggest that any such study would prove that the benefits of investing in peace far outweigh the cost. Silencing the guns and realizing a conflict-free Africa is a challenging task, but we should all work in earnest and full commitment towards that goal. The peoples of the Horn are incredibly brave and talented, and given a chance, they can show phenomenal can-do spirit. Djibouti concurs with the assessment by the African Union heads of state as underlined in AU Assembly decision regarding the unresolved border dispute between Djibouti and Eritrea adopted on July the 2nd in Nouakchott, Mauritania. It emphasizes that there is an urgent, and I quote, need for all countries in the Horn of Africa to engage towards maximizing possibilities for achieving lasting peace in the region. It requests the AU Commission to continue with its efforts in assisting Djibouti and Eritrea to reach a peaceful solution to the territorial dispute between them. In this context, the Assembly urges the two countries to extend the necessary cooperation to the Commission. End of quote. Let me state unequivocally that Djibouti stands ready to work with the African Union Commission. In the same vein, Djibouti welcomes the letter dated July 17, 2018 by the Secretary General regarding the ongoing border dispute between the Republic of Djibouti and the State of Eritrea with a view to assisting the countries in collaboration with the Security Council in finding a way forward, either through a mutually agreed arbitration or other means of peaceful dispute settlement to both parties. Distinguished members of the Council, Djibouti has invested in peace. It submitted a legal memorandum and a comprehensive statement of pertinent facts and legal principles applicable to this matter and other matters that form part of the dispute, and promptly provided a list of prisoners of war in its custody. As the Secretary General begins to undertake consultations, we need to approach the resolution of this conflict in good faith and with an open mind, while bearing in mind that the conflict has been going on for the last 10 years, and we have gone through 6 years of fruitless negotiations under the auspices of Qatar. The Council should urge Eritrea, in line with Para 40 of Resolution 2384, to meaningfully engage in the mediation efforts led by the Secretary General in collaboration with the Security Council. We cannot afford to squander the opportunity we have to build and own a future of peace and development in the region. It's worth recalling that the Qatar-led mediation effort broke down as soon as it began because Eritrea refused to appoint its member to the body that was established to mediate and never really has shown any serious commitment to peace. While noting the potential prospect for peace in the region, there is no escaping the fact that the international boundary remains disputed. Eritrea continues to occupy Djiboutian territory, prisoners of war remain unaccounted for, threat of force continue to emanate from the Eritrean side, and the risk of violent confrontation remains high. As documented in the last monitoring group report, there is ongoing activity on the Eritrean side of the border at Ras Dumera, and the situation is vulnerable to manipulation by spoilers. Furthermore, as documented in successive monitoring group reports, Eritrea continues to recruit, train, and equip Djibouti rebels at the Ende Ali training camp, from where they conduct violent raids on villages in Djibouti and attacks on Djiboutian security forces. The report of the monitoring group goes on to provide a detailed account based on testimonies by former fighters on how they participated in violent cross-border abduction raids, including abduction of children. We call on Eritrea to stop stealing the lives of these children that are often psychologically traumatized and are a loss to their communities and nation. Mr. President, in doing so, it defiantly ignores Security Council resolutions. If the Council's resolutions are to be regarded as more than empty and meaningless gestures, the sanctions for non-compliance must remain in place as long as Eritrea refuses to comply with them. At the same time, Djibouti would support action by the Council to facilitate Eritrea's compliance by laying out a clear path and a reasonable timetable towards this end. In this regard, Djibouti would like to kindly submit the following observations. 1. In respect of ending Eritrea's support to armed groups, the Council should resolve to send a monitoring mission to Eritrea within 1 month, with the condition that Eritrea commit to full cooperation with the mission, including full access to all information and records the mission deems necessary and all personnel it finds necessary to interview. The mission would then report to the Council within 30 days of its return from Eritrea. Second, in regard to prisoners of war, the Council could require that Eritrea account for them to the same monitoring mission and permit access to the mission as well as the ICRC. Third, finally, in respect of the good offices of the Secretary General, in close collaboration with the Security Council, the Secretary General could convene an urgent meeting of the parties to facilitate an agreement between them upon a mutually acceptable means of peaceful dispute settlement from among those identified in Article 33 of the Charter. The Secretary General could issue his recommended solution within 120 days and require that Eritrea and Djibouti either accept that solution or, in the event one of them does not, accept submission of the dispute to the International Court of Justice for a final and binding resolution. It is Djibouti's view that this path and this timetable would offer Eritrea a fair, reasonable, and prompt means to solve outstanding issues. It accomplishes this in a manner that vindicates the actions of the Council and assures compliance with international law. On Somalia, Djibouti is heartened by the outcome of the Somalia Partnership Forum and the progress that Somalia is making in a number of critical areas. We welcome the endorsement of the transition plan by the African Union Peace and Security Council and the commitment to its implementation as expressed in its communique of July 27, 2018. AMISOM continues to play a critical enabling role as Somalia strives to develop its capabilities in order to gradually assume responsibility for security. AMISOM deserves the continued support of the international community. In this regard, Djibouti welcomes the renewal of AMISOM mandate earlier this morning.
To conclude, Mr. President, the emergence of a new Horn is now possible. This is an objective that is within our reach. Djibouti stands fully ready to deliver on its contribution with the aim of achieving a comprehensive, lasting, and robust peace in the region for the benefit of our peoples. Getting bogged down in the past is not an option. Together, let us build a better future for our children. Thank you for your attention.
Representative of Djibouti for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. This meeting is adjourned.
Good afternoon. I have been asked by the members of the Security Council to make a few comments after the discussions we've had today. First of all, the members of the Security Council welcomed the first visit to the Horn of Africa by the chair of the Sanctions Committee in Somalia and Eritrea since 2010 that he conducted in May. The members of the Security Council noted that the chair was not able to visit Eritrea during his visit. Members of the Council welcomed the continued commitment of the federal government of Somalia to political and security reforms and to improving weapons and ammunition management in order to comply fully with the terms of the partial lifting of the arms embargo. The members of the Council looked forward to further progress in this regard and reiterated their readiness to support this process, including through the Sanctions Committee and the Somalia and Eritrea Monitoring Group. They strongly commended the historic signing of the joint declaration of peace and friendship by the leaders of Eritrea and Ethiopia on 9th of July, and the commitment by both parties to jointly endeavor to ensure regional peace, development and cooperation. The members of the Security Council supported and encouraged Ethiopia in line with the commitment made by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia to help in normalizing relations between Eritrea and Djibouti, in the same spirit that helped facilitate the historic agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea. The members of the Security Council further welcomed the announcement that Eritrea and Somalia would work together to foster regional peace and stability. The members of the Security Council reiterated their readiness to support the region in these efforts. Thank you very much.
Was there the Eritrean ambassador asked for the lifting of sanctions, and the Ethiopian ambassador hinted that that would probably be acceptable. Was there any discussion in the Council of the lifting of sanctions?
Yeah, that issue is being discussed. As I said in my statement on behalf of Council members, that there is a readiness to support the region in these efforts, and I think you should understand with that there is a readiness to move forward on that issue as well.
Would the Council lift sanctions if the border dispute between Eritrea and Djibouti is not resolved?
I think it's a bit too early to say, but there is, I think, promising diplomatic efforts, including on the relationship between Djibouti and Eritrea. And again, the Council members mentioned the one by Ethiopian Prime Minister to facilitate such progress. Thank you very much.